Oke. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are always happy and healthy. Welcome to an online conference about corruption law. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rahma Ardana Fara Aviva, as Master of Ceremonies. This conference aims to open up about corruption cases that are happening in our country. So hopefully everyone can listen to the event well and in an orderly manner. The arrangement of event at this conference is the first opening, second content, and third closing. And then I will introduce the moderator and speaker for this conference, the Honorable Fransisko Nostrada Sitepu as moderator, the Honorable Victoria Fundyta Savera as the first speaker, the Honorable Muhammad Rafi Ali Muqoddas as the second speaker, the Honorable Yudwika Angga Utama as the third speaker. Immediately, we enter a sense of event that will be guided by a moderator. Moderators are welcome.
Okay, thank you, MC, for the occasion. Before we go any further, I will read the introduction of the topic we are discussing. Corruption is one of the most crucial problems in Indonesia. However, the crackdown on corruption is still far from being successful. How to solve corruption case in our country? How to prevent corruption? Today, there were three speakers who will present the topic of corruption. That was the presentation.
Thank you for the occasion. Good morning, everyone. I, Victoria Fundyta Savera, will present some points of our big topic, namely corruption in Indonesia. And our title here is Corruption During the COVID-19 Pandemic. But I'm not alone. As the MC and moderator said earlier, I'm also accompanied by two of my friends who will introduce themselves to their respective sections. So, we will talk in four parts. They are the meaning of corruption, the impact of corruption, corruption cases in Indonesia, which are divided into two, namely corruption before the COVID-19 pandemic and corruption after the COVID-19 pandemic, and the corruption eradication efforts. So first, we will talk about the meaning of corruption. Corruption is an act designed to grant advantages that go against the rights and duties of others. According to law number 31 of 1999, corruption is any act of a person who violates the law by acting himself or another person in a company that may damage the state's finances of the country's economy. The problem of corruption has indeed become a crucial problem in Indonesia from time to time. The cases of corruption are increasingly becoming and harming many aspects of life in society and causing a domino effect that spreads to several aspects of people's lives, such as economics, politics, and law. Okay, now let's move to the next part, which is the impact of corruption. According to Imade Agrakumurajaya, in his journal entitled Corruption in Indonesia Increased Rapidly 2019, states that there are negative impacts in systemic corruption on the process of democratization and development. Namely, corruption kills the democratic process by reducing public trust in the political process. Corruption distorts decision-making on public policy, law, and bureaucracy only serve to power and owners of capital. Corruption causes development projects and public facilities and not the needs of the community. So that is indeed the impacts of corruption can be in the form of the collapse of the character, morals, integrity, and religiosity of. There is a bad Indonesian economy, resulting in the death of the work ethic of the people in Indonesia, damage to natural resources by irresponsible people, and has a social impact by decreasing human.
Corruption cases in Indonesia, which are divided into two, namely before the COVID-19 pandemic and during the COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, in before the COVID-19 pandemics, the bribery of case of sugar import regulation by Irman Guzman. Two, corruption case of lobster seed export bribery by Edi Prabowo. Yeah, and last, corruption social assistance program for the application of integrated crop presenting movement 3 ASN by in Gorontalo. Uh, and during the COVID-19 pandemic, for the first, social assistance corruptions by Juliari Batubara. Second, corruption case in the procurement voice. And the last, Lebaksat public cemetery land corruption.
The corruption eradication efforts. Efforts to eradicate corruption in Indonesia are still very weak. It seems that the resolution of the corruption problem is still not perfectly implemented by law enforcers, especially corruption carried out during the COVID-19 pandemic. This can be seen from several decisions that have been taken for corruption cases during the pandemic. We take as an example the case of Juliari Batubara. Here we know that the criminal act of corruption that he has done has greatly harmed the people and the country, because it was carried out during a pandemic which includes certain conditions referred to in the Corruption Crime Act in the Article 2, Paragraph 2. Juliari Batubara should have been sentenced to death. However, in practice, the death penalty still reaps many unclear considerations by the judge. In fact, in the law, it is clearly written that judges have the right or obligation to explore, follow and understand the legal values and sense of justice that live in the society, which is stated in Article 5, Paragraph 1 of Law Number 48 of 2009. In the journal Muhammad Khairul Mukarrabin and Bardanawawi Arif entitled The Death Penalty Formulation Policy in the Law on the Eradication of Criminal Acts of Corruption During the Coronavirus Disease 2019 Pandemic based on the perspective of criminal law reform state that in Article 5 Paragraph 1 indicates that a judge as a law enforcement officer can make legal discoveries if there is an ambiguity or still to abstract an applicable legal norm. However, in its implementation until now, no judge has ever decided that someone deserved the death penalty. Therefore, the perspective of the renewal of the death penalty law is still a lot of uncertainty, so it must be examined regarding the provisions for the mention of certain circumstances as to what it is like. Okay.
Okay, thank you to the speakers for presenting the material. Now we enter the question and answer session. For those who want to ask, please use the raise hand feature. Okay, please for those who want to ask question. Okay, please. Okay, please ask the question. Shahrul.
Okay, my name is Shahrul Ramadhan. I want to ask the presenter, what do you think if someone becomes a suspect in a corruption case and has been caught? Where is the money from corruption and who will bear the loss?
Okay, for the speaker.
Thank you, Rama, for the question, and I answer the question. Uh, the answer is as explained in Article 18, Paragraph 1 of the law on the education of criminal acts of corruption. In addition to addition penalties, there will be repatriation of movable or immovable property, payment of replacement money for a number of goods that they have been corrupted, and the revocation of certain rights. Thank you.
Okay, any feedback from Shahrul? No. Okay, we next question from Arjun. Please, Arjun.
Okay, thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Arjun Permadi. I want to ask, what is the impact of implementing the death penalty formulation policy in the COVID-19 pandemic period based on the perspective of Indonesian criminal law review? Thank you.
Okay. To be honest, we cannot give an exact answer to your question because it concerns the future. Because basically, the application of the death penalty has never happened in Indonesia. However, if this law is actually implemented, we think there will still be a positive and negative impacts. From the positive impacts, it is possible that the community will increasingly trust the law enforcement officers in carrying out their duties, or the community will return to trust in the legal system itself. Or maybe in the future, it will have an impact on the thoughts of prospective corruptors, such as corruptors who discourage their intention to commit criminal acts of corruption, so that this can reduce the number of corruption cases in Indonesia. However, this also doesn't rule out the possibility that in its application, there may be a conflict of views which can be considered as a negative impact of the implementation of the death penalty. Namely, the view that the death penalty violates human rights because basically the death penalty is directly related to the loss of person's life. So in making a decision or in carrying out something, of course, there are positive and negative impacts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Victoria.
Okay, next question from Notario Raviza, Rahmatullah. Please ask the question.
Thank you for the occasion. My name is Notario. I want to ask a question. In Indonesia, there is already a death penalty for corruptor in certain circumstances. Do you think that death penalty can provide a deterrent effect for corruptor?
Okay, Rio, thank you for the question. In our opinion, the death penalty for a person who was convicted of corruption doesn't have a deterrent effect yet on the other for not to commit corruption, because this punishment has not been proven to have a deterrent effect on criminals, because this law has never been applied. And for the example, the death penalty for drug dealers that have been carried out, but it's less effective because there are still many drug dealers still doing it.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Okay, next question from Adinda, Tita.
Good morning. Thank you for the chance that given to me. I am Adinda Tita Putri. I have a question. There are many obstacles in eradicating corruption, especially when corruption has been systematically rooted in all aspects of people life in country. Several methods have been tried, but the practice of corruption is still fertile and growing, both in terms of quantity and quality. And then, what are the government's efforts in eradicating corruption?
Thank you, Adinda, for the good question. I will answer your question. The answer is the government has enacted law 21 of 1990, which has been changed to law number 20 of 2021 about the eradication of corruption and several other laws and regulations are one of the appropriate government efforts in attacking corruption, both formally and materially. It is because every human being has human rights. So the death penalty is a crime that is contrary to human rights norms. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafi.
Okay, next question from Audrey Asmar.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Audrey. I want to ask that in the previous presentation, it was stated that efforts to eradicate corruption in Indonesia are still weak. So what do you think the government should do so that the level of corruption doesn't increase? Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey, for the question. I will answer your question. In our opinion, in addition of enforcing the law taught the existing apparatus and maximizing the performance of the existing apparatus to deal with corruption type issues, namely by holding more frequent socialization about law enforcement issues in the community with aim of increasing public awareness to be more obedient of to the law, and it is hoped that with the community more obedient of the law, the community can become a government spy if in the surrounding environment there has been a criminal act of corruption and will with public awareness of the law. They won't commit corruption. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rafi, for the answer.
Okay, we have finished entered the question and answer session. Thank you for the time and opportunity. I return it to Master of Ceremony.
Okay, all right. We are finally at the end of the event, and thank you to everyone who has joined this online conference. Thank you for the best moderator and speakers. Thank you for your attention. On behalf of the event committee in charge, I'm Rahma as the Master of Ceremonies saying goodbye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan.